What are we going to
That
do?
daughter
They've
was
seen
sold to an
us.
alpha vampire.
Just
but
stay
he
close
treated
to
her
me. I
like
won't
a
let
queen.
anything happen to you.
The villagers moved quickly, heads bowed against the wind, whispering prayers for warmth and safety. In a small, decaying house at the edge of the village, a family argued in hushed, fearful tones. Their daughter, Seraphine, sat quietly in the corner, her hands folded in her lap. She was a girl of 17, round and soft, with wide green eyes that seemed to hold the sadness of the world. She had grown up hearing whispers about her size, about how she would never marry, and about how her family wished she were different. Her father, a merchant who had once traded in silks and spices but had lost most of his wealth, paced the floor. His mother, thin and sharp-eyed, wrung her hands nervously. "We cannot keep her," her father said finally, his voice low but firm. "She brings no advantage to this family. She is a burden. We must send her away. It is the only way." Seraphine's heart sank. She had expected cruelty from the world, but not from her own blood. "Send me away, to where?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Her mother avoided her gaze. "There is a buyer, a man, a noble, someone powerful. He is not like ordinary people. He will pay well." Seraphine's stomach twisted. "A noble? Who is he?" Her father's jaw tightened. "He is a vampire, an alpha of a clan far to the north. He chooses only those he desires. He has asked for you. We agreed. He will take you to his castle." The word vampire made Seraphine shiver. In Avershade, vampires were creatures of shadow, feared even by the bravest hunters. Legends spoke of their power, their immortality, and the coldness of their hearts. But this alpha, he was different. He was rumored to rule over mountains and forests, a king among the night, feared by all who lived in the villages around him. "Why me?" Seraphine asked softly, tears threatening to spill. "Why would he want me?" Her mother sighed, her voice brittle. "Because he sees something in you that we cannot. You may not understand now, but perhaps this is your chance to become someone important. Someone he will honor." Seraphine did not believe it. She had spent her life being ignored, teased, and belittled. How could a powerful vampire see anything but her size? Yet she had no choice. The arrangements had been made. There was no turning back. The next morning, a black carriage awaited at the edge of the village. Its wheels sank slightly into the mud, and its polished surface reflected the stormy sky. Seraphine, wrapped in a heavy cloak to hide her figure, climbed inside. She felt small and fragile, as though the world itself might crush her before she reached the castle. The journey was long. The carriage rolled through forests so dense that sunlight barely touched the ground. Trees twisted in strange shapes, and shadows seemed to move along with them. Seraphine watched the landscape with a mixture of fear and awe. She had never seen such wild, untamed beauty. At times she thought she heard whispers carried on the wind, but when she looked out, no one was there. By the second night, they reached the mountains. Peaks rose like jagged teeth into the stormy sky, and lightning flashed along their edges. Seraphine clutched the sides of the carriage, her heart pounding. Somewhere within those mountains was the castle of Lord Kale, the alpha vampire who now claimed her as his own. When the carriage finally stopped, Seraphine's breath caught in her throat. The castle was enormous, made of black stone that seemed to drink in the light. Towers rose high into the clouds, and windows glimmered with an otherworldly light. Gargoyles crouched on the walls, their eyes seeming to follow her every movement. A cold wind swept through the entrance, carrying with it the scent of pine, rain, and something ancient, something dangerous. The carriage doors opened, and a tall figure stepped forward. Lord Kale. He was everything the legends had promised and more. Broad-shouldered, with hair black as midnight and eyes that glimmered like molten gold, he exuded power and command. His presence filled the courtyard, yet there was an elegance in the way he moved, a careful grace beneath the weight of his authority. "Seraphine," he said, his voice deep and smooth, almost hypnotic. "Do not be afraid. You are safe here. Come forward." Seraphine froze. His gaze was intense, as if he could see into the deepest corners of her heart. but there was no malice there, no cruelty. Only curiosity and something she could not name. Hesitantly, she stepped out of the carriage. Cale extended his hand, and though her instincts screamed to flee, Seraphine placed her small hand in his. It was warm, surprisingly human, yet stronger than anything she had felt before. "You have traveled far," he said. "Rest now. You will need your strength in the days to come." The castle interior was even more magnificent. Dark marble floors reflected candlelight, and tapestries lined the walls, depicting battles, ancient rituals, and scenes of vampires and humans intertwined in ways that seemed both beautiful and tragic. Seraphine's eyes wandered over everything, and Cale watched her quietly, a faint smile playing on his lips. "You may sleep in your room," he said. "A servant will guide you." The servant, silent and pale, led her through winding hallways until they reached a chamber that was more like a sanctuary than a room. Soft blankets and pillows were piled on a bed large enough for a king. Windows looked out onto the stormy night, the mountains rising like guardians around the castle. Alone, Seraphine sat on the bed, her heart still racing. She expected fear, pain, or cold indifference from Cale. Instead, she felt something else. A spark of hope, faint but undeniable, as though she had been plucked from despair and placed somewhere she might belong. That night, unable to sleep, she wandered the castle quietly. Candlelight flickered along the walls, and shadows danced like living creatures. She found a grand hall filled with portraits, but one in particular caught her breath. A woman, regal and beautiful, stood before the same mountains, her eyes holding both sadness and strength. And somehow, she looked like Seraphine herself. "Who is she?" Seraphine whispered, reaching toward the painting. A voice, soft and deliberate, spoke from the doorway. "She was someone important, someone whose story is bound to yours." Seraphine spun around. Cale stood there, his expression unreadable but his eyes filled with something. Respect, reverence, perhaps even sorrow. I don't understand," Seraphine said, trembling. "You will in time," Cale replied. "All will be revealed, but know this, you are not here by chance. There is a purpose for you in this castle, Seraphine, a destiny that only you can fulfill." Seraphine's mind raced. Destiny, purpose. She had never been anyone's hope or hero. She had been a burden, laughed at and scorned. And yet, standing before Cale, she felt a flicker of something she had never felt before: possibility. Before she could ask more, Cale turned and left silently. The echoes of his footsteps faded into the dark corridors, leaving Seraphine alone with her thoughts and the painting. Her pulse was wild. She had been sold, cast away from her family, and brought to a castle of shadows and legends. Yet, for the first time, she did not feel entirely afraid. She returned to her chamber, the storm outside intensifying. Lightning split the sky, and thunder rolled across the mountains like the drums of some ancient army. She sat by the window, staring at the peaks in the distance, wondering what awaited her in the days to come. Sleep finally claimed her, but her dreams were filled with strange visions. A woman who looked like her, a castle that stretched into the clouds, and a figure cloaked in darkness, yet radiating light. The whispers of destiny and power stirred in her mind, calling her towards something she did not yet understand. When the first light of dawn broke over the mountains, Seraphine awoke with a determination she had never known. The castle was quiet, but she could feel it alive, as if it were waiting for her to step into her own story. And somewhere deep in her chest, a tiny ember of hope burned brightly. Outside, Lord Cale stood on a balcony, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. For a moment he seemed almost human, almost vulnerable. Then he saw her looking up, and the faintest smile touched his lips. Something told him that Seraphine was unlike anyone he had ever known, someone who could change everything, even the course of centuries. The castle doors opened, the wind carrying whispers of the past, the future, and the unknown. Seraphine knew her life had changed forever, but she did not yet know how far she would have to go, or the secrets that would soon reveal themselves. And in that moment, the shadows of the castle seemed to shift, almost as if they were alive, watching her, waiting for her to take the first step toward a destiny she could not yet imagine. Cliffhanger. That evening, as Seraphine wandered the candle-lit halls once more, she discovered a secret door partially hidden behind a tapestry. Her hand trembled as she touched it. Beyond it, she could hear a faint, golden voice whispering her name, a voice that promised revelations, challenges, and a connection she had never dreamed possible. The morning after her first night in the castle, Seraphine awoke with the sunlight streaming faintly through the tall, arched windows. She had barely slept. The dreams from the night before had left her mind restless. The visions of the mysterious woman in the portrait and the strange whispers calling her name lingered like a shadow across her thoughts. When she rose and looked out over the castle grounds, she saw the mountains bathed in a silver mist. The air was crisp and carried the scent of pine and wet stone. Seraphine shivered, not from cold but from a strange mixture of awe and fear. She had been sold to a vampire, yet she felt an odd sense of belonging she could not explain. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she said, her voice firmer than she expected. The door opened and a young servant stepped in. He was pale, with dark eyes and long black hair tied neatly behind his head. He bowed deeply. "Milady," he said quietly, "Lord Kale requests your presence in the great hall. He wishes to begin your lessons." Seraphine's heart skipped. Lessons. She had not expected school in a castle of shadows, much less from the most powerful vampire in the north. But curiosity overcame fear. She followed the servant down the winding corridors. The hallways seemed endless, with portraits and tapestries lining every wall. Each image depicted scenes of battle, magic, and long-forgotten ceremonies. Finally, they reached the great hall. Sunlight pierced through stained glass windows, casting colored light across the polished stone floors. At the far end of the hall, Kale stood near a large fireplace. His eyes turned toward her as she entered. "Good morning, Seraphine," he said. His voice, deep and calm, seemed to echo slightly in the vast hall. "You rested well, I hope?" I did," Seraphine replied, bowing her head slightly. "Thank you, my lord." Kale studied her for a moment, his golden eyes piercing yet gentle. "You are here for a reason, Seraphine. Not because your family sold you, but because fate has brought you to this castle. You are destined for something greater than you realize." Seraphine felt her cheeks flush. She had heard rumors of prophecy and fairy tales, but to hear it directly from the man who had taken her, it was overwhelming. Kale gestured for her to come closer. "Your lessons will teach you about this castle, its magic, and the power that flows through these mountains. You will learn to understand the world you have entered, and perhaps you will discover your own strength." The next hours passed in a blur. Kale guided her through the castle, showing her the hidden passages, the libraries filled with ancient scrolls, and rooms that contained relics older than the village she had come from. Seraphine felt like a small creature walking among giants, yet Kale treated her with respect, answering her questions patiently and explaining each detail with care. At one point, they entered the castle's library, a vast room with ceilings so high that they disappeared into shadow. Shelves of ancient books stretched up like towers, and the scent of old parchment filled the air. "This library contains knowledge of the old clans, the vampires, and the humans who once walked alongside us," Kale explained. "Many secrets are hidden here, and some are dangerous. You must be careful which doors you open, Seraphine." Her eyes widened. "Dangerous, like curses." Kale nodded. "Yes, some knowledge can harm the mind or the soul if approached without understanding. But there are also truths here that can set you free and perhaps even free me." Seraphine's heart skipped. Free him. Could she, a girl who had never felt powerful in her life, actually have the ability to help a being as strong and immortal as Kale? The thought both terrified and fascinated her. Over the next few days, Seraphine began to feel the first stirrings of confidence. Kale's lessons were not just about knowledge but about perception, awareness, and courage. He taught her to move silently through the castle, to notice details others might miss, and to trust her instincts. Yet with each lesson, Seraphine felt something else growing between them, a tension that was quiet but electric. She noticed how Kale's eyes lingered on her when he thought she was not looking, and she found herself watching him in return, drawn to the strength and mystery he carried. She caught herself imagining what he might think of her, wondering if he saw her as anything more than the girl who had been sold to him. One evening, Kale led her to the castle gardens. The moon hung low over the mountains, casting silver light across fountains, statues, and winding paths. The air was filled with the scent of night-blooming flowers, and the quiet hum of life in the castle seemed to pause as they walked. "You have changed since you arrived," Kale said softly, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. "You carry yourself with more confidence. You are learning, Seraphine, not just about the castle but about yourself." Seraphine's cheeks flushed. I am trying, my lord." Kale smiled faintly, a rare expression that softened his usually stern features. "Trying is enough. Courage begins with trying." They walked in silence for a few moments, the garden shadows stretching around them. Seraphine felt a flutter in her chest, a mixture of admiration, fear, and something she could not name. She wanted to speak, to ask the questions that burned in her mind, but the words caught in her throat. Finally, Kale spoke again. "Seraphine, there is a prophecy. You must know about it, though I warn you, it is not simple and it may frighten you." Seraphine's breath caught. "A prophecy?" Kale nodded, his expression serious. "It is said that a girl, born to a family of little note, will come to this castle and break a curse that has bound me for centuries. This girl, she will have the courage, the heart, and the wisdom to do what no one else can." Seraphine's mind spun. Could it be her? She, who had been treated as useless, abandoned by her own family, could she truly hold the power to change the fate of an immortal being? She felt the weight of the moment pressing on her chest. Kale studied her closely. "I do not know if you understand the importance of what I say, but I see something in you, Seraphine, something others have overlooked. That is why you are here. That is why you were chosen." Tears pricked at her eyes, but she blinked them back. I don't know if I can do it," she admitted softly. Kale stepped closer. "You do not need to know now. You only need to trust yourself and trust the path that has brought you here. You have already shown bravery simply by surviving until now and by stepping into this castle. That is more than most could do." Seraphine felt a small spark of determination ignite within her. Perhaps she was not as powerless as she had always believed. Perhaps there was more to her story than she had ever imagined. Over the following days, Kale's lessons grew more intense. He taught her about the vampire clans, their traditions, and the dangers of the surrounding lands. He showed her how to read the magical wards of the castle, teaching her to sense energy, intention, and hidden threats. Seraphine learned quickly, her sharp mind and keen observation proving valuable. Kale began to trust her with more responsibilities, and she, in turn, began to feel a sense of purpose she had never known. Yet with knowledge came danger. One night as they walked through a hallway lined with mirrors, Seraphine caught a flicker of movement behind her. Shadows seemed to shift unnaturally and the air grew colder. Kale's hand found hers instinctively, a grip both firm and reassuring. "Do not fear," he whispered. "Some things in this castle are older than we are. They test those who enter to see if they are worthy." Seraphine nodded, her pulse racing. Though she felt fear, she also felt a strange excitement. The castle, the shadows, the magic, it was all part of the world she was now a part of. And perhaps, just perhaps, she could rise to meet the challenges that lay ahead. In the quiet hours before dawn, Seraphine sat by the window in her chamber, looking out at the mountains. The moonlight painted the peaks silver, and the clouds moved like waves across the sky. She thought of Kale, of the prophecy, and of the strange portrait that had first drawn her attention. Something deep within her told her that the journey she had begun was only the start. The castle held secrets, dangers, and lessons that she had yet to uncover. And Kale was both guide and mystery, a being of power and wisdom who seemed to see her for who she truly was. As the first light of morning touched the mountains, Seraphine made a silent promise to herself. She would not be afraid. She would learn, she would grow, and she would discover the strength she had never known. For if she was to fulfill the prophecy, she could not falter. That evening, as she wandered the halls once more, she discovered the hidden door behind the tapestry. Her hand trembled as she touched the ancient wood, and she felt a soft vibration, as though something alive rested beyond. A golden voice whispered her name, faint but clear, calling her toward a truth she had not yet imagined. Seraphine took a deep breath. Whatever lay beyond that door, she would face it. She had come too far to turn back now. And somewhere in the shadows, Kale watched silently, a glimmer of pride in his golden eyes. He knew the path ahead would test her in ways neither of them could yet foresee, but he also knew that Seraphine was unlike anyone he had ever met. She might be the one to change everything, to break the curse that had bound him for centuries. The castle held its breath, waiting for the next step in the story of the girl who had been sold, and the alpha vampire who had treated her like a queen. Cliffhanger. As Seraphine opened the hidden door, a soft, golden light spilled into the hall. Inside, she glimpsed something extraordinary, a room filled with floating symbols, ancient artifacts, and a mirror that reflected not her face, but the woman from the portrait. And in that reflection, Seraphine saw not fear, but destiny. The castle of Lord Kale had never been completely silent. Shadows whispered along the stone corridors, and the flicker of candlelight seemed to move like living creatures. Yet recently the air had grown heavier, thicker with tension. Seraphine could feel it, a subtle trembling beneath her skin, a warning she could not ignore. She had spent weeks learning the ways of the castle, following Kale's instructions, and exploring the secrets behind the hidden doors. Each lesson had strengthened her mind, sharpened her senses, and built her courage. She no longer trembled at the sight of Kale or the vast, dark halls. Yet something told her that the castle itself was on the brink of change, and that shadows of the past were stirring. That evening, Kale invited Seraphine to dine with him in the great hall. The room was filled with candlelight, reflecting in golden patterns across the polished stone floor. A soft fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. For the first time, Seraphine noticed the small details, the delicate carvings of mythical creatures on the furniture, the ancient scrolls carefully stacked on shelves, and the faint scent of night-blooming flowers carried in from the garden. "You have grown accustomed to this place," Kale said, his golden eyes fixed on her. "Yet there is still much you do not know. The castle is older than any living creature. It holds secrets even I have not fully uncovered." Seraphine nodded, her fork trembling slightly as she reached for the food. I am learning, my lord. Every day I feel like I understand more, and yet there is so much I cannot see." Kale smiled faintly. "That is why knowledge is a journey, not a destination. Every answer leads to more questions. Every shadow hides another truth. You must remain patient, observant, and courageous." Seraphine's heart skipped at his words. There was something in the way Kale spoke, a mixture of authority and warmth that made her feel both safe and unsettled. She could not deny that she had begun to feel a strange admiration for him, a connection she had never experienced before. As the meal ended, a servant hurried into the hall, pale and breathless. "My lord, there are signs, intruders approaching the castle. Vampires of the rival clan, they seek you." Kale's expression hardened. The warmth in his gaze shifted to steel. "Prepare the wards," he commanded. "Seraphine, stay behind. This is no place for someone untrained in the arts of defense." But Seraphine shook her head. "No, my lord, I have learned much. I want to help. I can't hide while others fight." Kale studied her carefully. There was determination in her green eyes, and for a moment he hesitated. Finally, he nodded. "Very well, but follow my instructions precisely. One mistake could cost us dearly." The castle erupted with movement. Shadows of wards shimmered along the walls, and the air thrummed with power. Seraphine stood at Kale's side as he moved through the hallways, directing the servants and preparing for the attack. Her pulse raced, fear mingling with excitement. This was the first true test of her courage, the moment when her lessons would matter. The enemy arrived as night fell. Figures emerged from the darkness, cloaked in black, their eyes glowing faintly with malicious intent. Seraphine recognized them from the stories Kale had told, vampires of a rival clan, cruel and cunning, who sought to seize the castle and destroy Kale's power. Kale stepped forward, his presence commanding. The shadows around him seemed to bend, twisting at his will. Seraphine could feel the immense strength radiating from him, yet she also sensed the burden he carried, centuries of isolation, battles, and curses. "Stay close," Kale whispered. "Watch carefully, learn what you must, and trust yourself." The first strike came quickly. Rival vampires dashed into the hall, claws flashing, but Kale's power was unmatched. With swift, precise movements, he cast them back, bending shadows to shield Seraphine and the servants. She followed his instructions, moving silently, observing, and using the wards to block entrances. Her hands trembled at first, but she remembered Kale's lessons and focused. One vampire broke through a shield and lunged toward her. Seraphine's breath caught, but before it could reach her, Kale's hand shot out, catching the creature with an unyielding grip. The intruder hissed and vanished into smoke, leaving Seraphine staring at Kale in awe. "You are ready," he said softly, his eyes locking onto hers. "Do not doubt yourself. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the strength to act despite it." The battle raged for hours. Seraphine moved with increasing confidence, using the knowledge Kale had shared to anticipate the enemy's moves. The rival vampires were powerful, but their attacks lacked the precision and strategy of Kale's defenses. Slowly, the tide turned in favor of the castle. During a brief pause, Seraphine found herself alone in one of the castle corridors. Her heart pounded and her hands shook from exhaustion. She leaned against the wall, taking in deep breaths. Fear and exhilaration battled within her. For the first time, she realized that she had faced danger, guided by Kale's wisdom, and survived. She felt alive in a way she had never known. Suddenly, a sound made her freeze. Footsteps approached, light but deliberate. She turned to see Kale standing there, his cloak brushing the floor, his golden eyes fixed on her. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice soft but commanding. "No, I'm fine," she replied, trying to steady her voice. I helped just like you said." Kale stepped closer. "Yes, you did, and you did more than I expected. You have courage, Seraphine, and more importantly, you have wisdom. You see the world not as a tool to control, but as a place to understand." Seraphine felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of pride and something deeper. She realized that Kale was not just a master teaching her lessons. He was a guide, someone who saw her true self, and for the first time she felt that she might be worthy of that recognition. But even as she stood there, a chill ran down her spine. She sensed danger lingering, a shadow that had not yet left the castle. She was right. Through the main hall, the rival vampires regrouped. Their leader, a tall figure with eyes like burning coals, stepped forward. "Kale," the voice hissed, "you cannot hide behind your walls forever. The castle will fall and your reign will end." Kale's eyes narrowed. "This castle is not mine to lose," he replied evenly. "It belongs to those who respect its power, and it will not fall while I stand." The air crackled with tension. The rival leader advanced, and Kale moved to intercept. Seraphine's heart raced. She wanted to stay close, but she also wanted to fight, to contribute, to prove that she could stand beside him. She remembered the lessons, the wards, and the power she could call upon. The battle resumed with greater intensity. Shadows clashed against shadows, and the air hummed with energy. Seraphine used the wards to block attacks, guiding servants to safety, and assisting Kale in ways she had never imagined. The thrill of survival mingled with fear, creating a heady mixture that made her feel stronger than she ever had before. Then, suddenly, she was pulled back by a powerful hand. One of the rival vampires had slipped past her defenses, and before she could react, he grabbed her arm. Panic surged, but she remembered Kale's teachings. Summoning all her courage, she pushed back, breaking free just as Kale appeared and dispatched the intruder with a single, precise motion. Seraphine's chest heaved with relief. Kale's gaze met hers, intense and golden. "You are remarkable," he said. "Do not doubt your worth. You are stronger than you think." As the battle ended, the rival clan retreated into the night, leaving the castle battered but standing. Seraphine sank to her knees, exhausted, yet exhilarated. She had faced true danger, survived, and discovered strength she had never known. Kale approached her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Tonight you have proven yourself, not just in battle but in courage, wisdom, and heart. You are no longer just a guest in this castle. You are part of its story." Seraphine looked up at him, awe and admiration shining in her eyes. I never thought I could do any of this. Thank you for believing in me." Kale's golden eyes softened. "Belief is only the first step. Action is what shapes destiny, and you, Seraphine, are taking that step." The castle was quiet once more, shadows settling back into corners and the fire in the hearth crackling softly. But Seraphine knew that the danger was far from over. The rival clan would return, stronger and more determined, and the prophecy she had been told weighed heavily on her mind. That night, she wandered the castle halls, seeking solace. She came upon the hidden room behind the tapestry, the golden light spilling from within. Inside, the mirror reflected not her own face, but the woman from the portrait. Seraphine stepped closer, and for the first time, she felt a true connection to the destiny Kale had spoken of. A whisper filled the room, soft and melodic, carrying words of warning, hope, and promise. Seraphine's heart pounded. She knew that the trials ahead would be even more dangerous, that the choices she would make could alter not only her life but Kale's as well. And as she stared into the reflection, she understood the truth. Courage alone would not be enough. She would need wisdom, strength, and a heart open to love, trust, and sacrifice. The shadows of the castle seemed to lean closer, as if aware that the next chapter of their story was about to begin. Cliffhanger. From the depths of the hidden room, the mirror shimmered and whispered again. This time, it showed a vision of Seraphine in the cursed forest, surrounded by enemies, with Kale fighting desperately to reach her. A chilling thought struck her. To fulfill the prophecy, she might have to face a sacrifice greater than she had ever imagined. The wind howled through the mountains surrounding Kale's castle, carrying with it the scent of pine, wet stone, and a strange, electric tension. Seraphine stood at the edge of the balcony, the moonlight bathing her in silver. Her heart beat fast, a mixture of fear, determination, and anticipation. Tonight she would face what the mirror had shown her, the cursed forest, the enemies, and the ultimate test of the prophecy. Kale approached silently, his golden eyes reflecting the moon. He did not speak at first, simply observing her. He had trained her, guided her, and protected her, yet he knew that some trials could only be faced alone. "You are ready," he said finally, his voice low and steady. "The forest is dangerous, more than any enemy you have faced before, but you are not the same girl who arrived at this castle weeks ago. You carry courage, wisdom, and a heart that can change fate itself." Seraphine swallowed hard. I am scared, but I cannot run from this. I have to face it, for the prophecy, for you, for myself." Kale's expression softened. "Fear is natural. Bravery is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. And you, Seraphine, have always acted with heart." Together, they descended into the castle's hidden passages. Shadows danced along the walls as they moved, carrying the weight of centuries in their quiet presence. Outside, the night had grown colder, the forest waiting like a living thing. The cursed forest. Legend said it was a place where time bent and lost souls wandered, forever seeking redemption or revenge. Kale had avoided it for centuries, bound by his curse. Tonight, Seraphine would step into its depths, not as a frightened girl, but as a determined force of destiny. The first trees of the forest loomed like dark sentinels. The moon barely touched the ground, and the fog rolled in thick waves. Seraphine shivered but tightened her cloak around her shoulders. Kale's hand rested lightly on her arm, guiding her without stifling her courage. "You will need to trust your instincts," Kale warned. "The forest tests your heart. It senses doubt, fear, and hesitation. Do not falter." Seraphine nodded, feeling the weight of the moment press upon her chest. Every step forward was a step into legend, a step toward the destiny she had once thought impossible. They had not walked far when shadows moved in unnatural patterns. The rival clan, stronger and more numerous than before, emerged from the mist. Their eyes glowed like coals, their fangs gleaming faintly. Kale stepped in front of Seraphine, ready to strike, but he did not attack immediately. "Seraphine," he said, his voice commanding yet calm, "you must act. Use what you have learned. This is your test." Her pulse raced. She had faced danger before, but the forest amplified fear, twisting it into illusions and whispers that clawed at the mind. She took a deep breath and focused. The wards Kale had taught her began to glow softly at her hands, shimmering ribbons of light forming in the air. With careful precision, she directed them to block the intruders, guiding them away from Kale and herself. The rival leader stepped forward, a towering figure cloaked in shadows. "You think a child can challenge us?" he sneered. Seraphine's hands trembled, but she raised her voice. "I am not a child. I am the one the prophecy spoke of, and I will not let you harm this castle or him or me." A bright burst of golden energy erupted from her wards, pushing the intruders back. They hissed and shrieked, retreating into the forest. Kale watched her with awe, realizing that the girl who had once been sold and afraid had become a force of her own. But the forest's trial was not yet over. The ground beneath them trembled, and ancient roots shot up like serpents, attempting to trap them. Shadows swirled, forming shapes that whispered doubts into Seraphine's mind. "You cannot do this. You are not enough. You are weak." She closed her eyes, recalling Kale's lessons. Courage was action despite fear. Wisdom was seeing through illusions. And the heart could light even the darkest shadows. She opened her eyes, and the golden light from her hands grew stronger, burning through the illusions. Kale moved beside her, his presence a steady anchor. "Do not falter, Seraphine, I am with you." Together they pressed forward, moving through the twisting forest, facing challenges that tested their minds, strength, and resolve. At one point, a vision appeared, a mirror of Kale, trapped, lifeless, bound by shadows. Seraphine's heart clenched, but she did not despair. She reached out with her light, and the shadows recoiled, freeing him from the illusion. "You saved me," Kale said, his voice low, carrying gratitude and something deeper, unspoken. "And you saved me," Seraphine replied. "Every day you showed me courage. You showed me who I could be." Finally, they reached the heart of the forest. A great stone altar stood in a clearing, covered in ancient runes that pulsed faintly with power. This was the center of the curse, the place Kale had avoided for centuries. The rival clan reappeared, their power concentrated, intent on stopping them. Kale stepped forward, his full strength rising, the air around him shimmering with his aura. "Stand behind me, Seraphine. You have done well, but this is my fight." Seraphine shook her head. "No, we do this together. I will not hide while you face this alone." Kale studied her, golden eyes softening. "Are you certain?" "I am certain," she said firmly. "We are equals here, together." The rival leader laughed, a sound that echoed through the trees. "Together, you cannot defeat what has ruled this land for centuries." but Seraphine stepped forward, holding her light steady. The runes on the altar recognized her courage, glowing brighter with every heartbeat. She felt a connection to Kale, to the castle, to the prophecy. She understood now. Her power came not from magic alone, but from her heart, her courage, and her willingness to stand beside Kale. With a combined force of Kale's shadow mastery and Seraphine's golden light, they struck at the rival clan. The clash of power sent shockwaves through the forest, uprooting twisted trees and scattering shadows. The rival vampires screamed and dissipated, their attack failing as the prophecy's power fulfilled itself. The forest fell silent. The shadows receded, leaving the moonlight clear and calm. Kale turned to Seraphine, his expression softened, almost vulnerable. "You did it," he said. "You have broken the curse that bound me." Seraphine's breath caught. "We did it together." Kale stepped closer, gently taking her hands in his. Not together as master and student, but as equals, as partners, as something more. Seraphine's eyes widened, and for a moment the forest was silent around them. Then slowly, Kale's golden eyes held hers with warmth, respect, and an affection that had grown over the weeks they had spent together. "You are my queen," he said, voice soft yet filled with authority. "Not by title alone, but by heart, courage, and wisdom. You have earned this." Tears pricked at Seraphine's eyes. She had never imagined a life like this, from a girl sold and shamed to a queen of shadows, standing beside the alpha vampire who had shown her respect, guidance, and trust. The forest itself seemed to acknowledge the moment. The moonlight brightened, and the trees swayed gently, as though celebrating the union of courage and power, of destiny fulfilled. Kale lowered his hand, brushing a strand of hair from Seraphine's face. "We have faced many trials," he said, "but this is only the beginning. The castle, the lands, the people who dwell here, all will look to us for guidance, and together we will rule with strength, justice, and wisdom." Seraphine nodded, feeling a deep sense of purpose and belonging. "I am ready," she said, "not just to stand beside you, but to be part of this world, to be part of you." The journey back to the castle was calm, the stormy tension of the forest replaced by a quiet, silvered dawn. The walls of the castle welcomed them home, the wards glowing softly in recognition of Seraphine's courage. For the first time, she felt truly at peace, not because danger was gone, but because she knew she could face it. Inside the castle, Kale led her to the great hall, now restored and shining in candlelight. Servants moved silently, shadows dancing gently along the walls. Kale turned to Seraphine, taking both her hands in his. "You are more than I ever hoped for," he said. "You are my queen, my equal, and the light that has broken the darkness of centuries. Together, we will protect this castle, this land, and the people who dwell within it." Seraphine's chest swelled with pride and joy. She had been sold, abandoned, and doubted her entire life. And yet here she was, strong, courageous, and revered, standing beside the vampire who had treated her like a queen from the very beginning. The castle settled into silence once more. But now, it was not the tense, living shadow of fear. It was a home, a fortress, a place of legend, and a symbol of destiny fulfilled. Seraphine and Kale stood together, looking toward the horizon, knowing that adventures and challenges would come, but confident that they would face them together. The prophecy had been fulfilled, yet the story was only beginning. And in that moment the castle itself seemed to breathe, the shadows softening, the moonlight glimmering across stone and forest, whispering of courage, destiny, and love that could last for centuries.